Hello, welcome to another episode of Moving Mountains. I'm Sumayyah Simone.
I'm Aisha Battle.
I'm Dr. Sheila.
And we have a special guest with us today. Assemblyman Antwan McClellan is with us today. He's a Republican assemblyman here in New Jersey. So he's coming in to have a conversation with us today about being a Black Republican assemblyman. A legislator. So I think one of the first questions we want to ask you is, how long have you been Republican?
Well, I was initially, when I registered to vote, when I was 18, I registered as an independent. And then probably back in 2008, there was a primary, and I had met some people that I wanted to support in that primary. And I learned then that you have to be declared at one party or the other to support those people. And so they had been good friends of mine, so I declared as a Republican. And so it's probably 2008, 2009, right around in there.
Okay. So what made you, because I'm sure like that there was pressure one way or another. What made you choose Republican as opposed to going Democrat? I mean, even though you have friends, what made you stay this long and then end up being a legislator?
And there's still pressure for me to become a Democrat.
Sure.
I just felt as though there's the goals and options that they were putting forth, I liked. So the fact that they didn't want to overtax, I think the lower taxes was a big thing to me, and to see what they do with higher taxes in our communities is just terrible. And I think there were good plans in place that we had locally to create jobs, not just for a certain group of people, but for all people. And where I'm from in Ocean City, there's not a large group of Black people in Ocean City, New Jersey, but there's a decent sized group, and we're all working class, hard working people. And we know what the quality of an education is, and they wanted to fully educate us and not have a big government and have government in trying to control everything. So those things appeal to me. And I think I wanted to go forward with that. And then, now as you move forward with healthcare, I think there's good plans in place that we can use to bring healthcare, not just to white people, but to our people also, that if we sit down and listen, we can come to the table with a good plan that's going to be effective for us, and not just, something that's going to cost us in the end.
Right. Makes sense. See, the reason why we wanted to have this conversation is because I feel like a lot of the Black community is only talking on one side of the playing field, right? Mm-hmm. And if you make sense, and if you think about it, I don't know any game, you could look at chess, you could look at soccer, you could look at basketball, baseball. What game can you play and all of your players are on one side of the field and you're going to win? But yet we demonize our people who are on the Republican side of the field, right? How is there supposed to be somebody on the table there looking out for our interests? Right. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If we're only locking ourselves in, are we even really free? Like if I can't say I want to be Democrat or Republican, where's the freedom in this country?
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%. And the funniest question I get is, well, you're a Black man, how are you a Republican? I was like, well, I don't ask a white man, why is he a Democrat?
Right.
So I don't ask that question. So I don't think the Democratic Party should be just for Black people. I don't think that's the way. It's never been that way. There's a history way back before, I was even thought about in this world that, Black people were Republicans, mm-hmm. And you can go back to Abraham Lincoln, who emancipated the slaves, his Republican, he was a Republican, and Black people were Republican then. All the way through this up until 1960 or somewhere around in there, I think it changed. But there was opportunity there where a lot of Black people were Republicans. Right. So I don't know where it comes from now that all Black people need to be Democrats. And then when you go in and look, and you look in the inner cities where they're democratically led inner cities by some white people and some Black people, those seem to be the cities that have the most issues. Mm-hmm. When you look at Republican-led municipalities, they seem to be going pretty well and well financially.
Assemblyman McKinley, I think I might have an answer to that, because I was born somewhere in the 60s, mm-hmm. and during the 60s, the two administrations were Democrat. Um, President Kennedy and then President Johnson, who signed the Civil Rights Act. So I think that's when we had the shift. But what the Democrats do, and they do well, they pander to the Black community. They're always there,
Yes.
always. They're boots on the ground. Whereas Republicans, I don't think a lot of Blacks understand where they stand. There's not enough representation coming into the community to talk about where they stand and where their key focus is to help empower the Black community. So I think that's where the disconnect is.
Yeah, and I can agree with you on that. And the thing that I had, and I was talking to people about when I was running, because I was a councilman before I was assemblyman, so I was a councilman for 8 years. But what I told people, and I consistently tell them, is you're not going to get me in a Black church during election time. You're just not going to do that. I'm not going to play that role. You know, if you want to go, then you go when it's off election. You go before you're elected, and that's how I've run my race, and that's how the three of us, myself, Eric Simonson, who also ran with me, and Michael Testa, we've been in our communities, and in our communities, you know, before we were elected or even thought about running for office during this time, and I keep telling people I'll be there after. You're just not going to see me during election time pandering for your vote and making broken promises. You know, I know what my community needs because I've been a part of it, and I'll continue to be a part of it, and they see me every day. Not just in October before a November election, I can come and promise and be that face in the crowd, so you know that you got the support. And I think that's where the issue is. And not to say Republicans don't do it, because some Republicans do, but politicians as a whole need to be careful with that. You know, be a part of your community every day, not just 30 days before it's election or 30 days before a primary when you need that vote. And I think that's a major disconnect. And a lot of Democrats don't have a problem with showing up in a Black church when it's election time.
And I think that, I guess, we also in a community need to retrain ourselves regarding, when election time comes. We're expecting to have those type of conversations and not really understanding that you're right. Those things should happen all the time. It shouldn't just be within a certain time of the year, and then we get upset because we don't like how they come at us during that certain time of the year. So it's like, which one do you want? You know what I mean? So we have to really rethink that as a community too,
That's true. I wonder though what the Republican Party could actually do to appeal more to the Black community. Like how would you, because I was thinking, like, I'm looking at President Trump's slogan, "Make America Great Again." And so, of course, to a lot of Black people, we're like, well, what exactly does that mean? It's very easy to take that slogan and be like, well, I ain't for y'all because it wasn't great for y'all. I mean, that's history,
Right.
So I wonder, like, what is, because I really want to start seeing real dialogue and real change, like all the, marching, Black Lives Matter, and, all the symbolic stuff that we see happening right now. I've seen it before. I've been alive long enough to see a lot of it before. And at this point, I want to see real change. You know what I mean? So, like I said, we're not going to get real change playing on half the field. Like, you can't win any game like that. You just can't, right?
True.
So how do we become full citizens of this country? That's kind of how I see it, because if there should not be any party that ignores racism, right? As it exists now. No party should get a pass because we only have two major parties. So if one party if there's only one party that will acknowledge it and the other one is like, that's not happening, then we already know that we go back and forth with leadership. So that means those needs are only going to be, or at least pretend to be, addressed half the time. And that allows one party to pretend because they know they're going to get your vote anyway, no matter what they do. Right?
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
How do we bridge that gap so that Black Americans could actually be free to choose candidates based on the issues, the actual issues?
Well, one with the Republican Party, I think it needs to be more people that look like me and you. I think that needs to start, and not just have old white men trying to make decisions for you.
Right.
You see old white men, and then I'm not gonna say. I have a problem with calling everybody racist.
Right.
Because I think God knows what's in your heart. So just you may make a mistake and say something, that doesn't necessarily mean you're racist.
Right.
So just they may say something that they shouldn't be saying, or they may say with their friends. That doesn't make it all right, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're racist or they don't understand. What means is that they need to talk to more people, and they need to see more Black people, and they need to be around more Black people so they can understand there's a difference in how you should be acting around Black people and their needs and their concerns, as there is a difference between you need to act when you're talking to people that are worth $2 or $3 or $4 billion. There's a large difference there. My life is going to be very different than somebody that makes $2 or $3 billion.
Right.
I can live paycheck to paycheck. That's how I'm living. I can't say that I can have a $7 million house in Italy. I don't have that. I have my little house in Ocean City, and I'm making it. So my conversation is going to be different than somebody with $2 billion. But if we're sitting across from one another and having conversation, you'll see what it is to walk in my shoes, and I can see what it is to walk in your shoes, and then we can kind of meet in the middle.
Right.
And we need to start that by respecting one another. And then I think, I don't want to say at this point in time we're older, but if you start with the kids don't care,
Right.
and they don't know what racism is until a parent tells them.
That's true.
So and so kids are just kids. And then so you start with them and you start teaching them Black history and you start teaching them American history in schools, which needs to happen. And then you can bring a different conversation to the table when it's election time and have a different group of people that can make decisions. Because at this point in time, I don't know if people are going to listen. When they hear Republican, that's a curse word, and they're turning to walk away from
Like
it.
a trigger.
So I don't know what you can do about that. Right. Besides me just trying to be me and talk to people, because I had a white man Democrat call me a racist after talking to me for 5 minutes. He thought I was a Democrat. He thought I was a Democrat hanging out with other Democrats and a bunch of other Republicans, and I was the only Black person there. And he said, I didn't realize all Black guys hung out with Republicans and talked to them. I said, well, I'm a Republican. He said, well, no, you're a racist. I said, you just talked to me for 15 minutes. And we were all hunky-dory. And then I said I'm a Republican. All of a sudden I'm a racist. So, I don't know how you change that with people.
I think you make a good point, though. There's a misconception, too, even with whites. And I clearly see that in some areas of the South where they feel as though to be a Republican, you've got to be white, you've got to fly the Confederate flag, and your conservative values fit in with white nationalism. Whereas here in Texas, I clearly see where those that are Republican, white and Black, their values fit in with Christian values, biblical doctrine. It's like a Bible Belt. So it's a little different. And I think the Republican Party has a disconnect, because if you've got someone who's touting a slogan, especially in the South, where lots of Blacks will say, America's never been great for us. What do you mean make it great again? You want to take it back to antebellum South or something? It comes across as a racist statement, not necessarily saying that the man is racist, but the statement is racist. So then you have those who feel as though they're the white nationalists holding on to that statement, flying the flag high, slapping our faces because we pay taxes too. So that's a turnoff to Blacks. I do believe that we can bridge the gap if more Republicans were to come in and say, here are our issues. Here's where we stand. Now let me explain what this means for your community.
Right.
According to how we've written this and what it's going to do within your community.
Right.
But I can tell you, in all of these years, I've never seen anybody come and explain that. If I want to know something about the Republican Party, unlike the Democratic Party, because Democrats come around and tell you everything, I mean, they listed from here to here.
Uh-huh.
I've had to go look it up to find out where this Republican candidate stands on this issue. And I think that's one of the first areas where we can possibly meet somewhere in the middle and come together if we've got some explanation as to what's your agenda, what are your plans, and how will it improve my community and my life.
Right.
Right. Because in the Democratic Party, even though, you know, like, they're never really ever held accountable, then they don't have to be held accountable because they're really the only ones at least talking about what improvements they can make in the Black community. You know, unlike a Republican who hasn't even attempted to make that, you know, to have that conversation, there's really nothing there. So a Democrat can come in and say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and we're going to improve this, and we're going to improve that. And because nobody has said anything, you know, a lot of people within the Black community are just happy that someone's even coming up with suggestions to make their community better. You know, it's almost like they don't even have to be held accountable for what they didn't do. All they need to do is say they're going to do something, and that's more than what the Republican Party is doing. And I just think that there's a disconnect there as well.
And I'll give you a perfect example. So when there was Romney Care in Massachusetts. That's what Obamacare was patterned after. But the Democrats took it and they ran with it. So now you have the Republicans talking about repeal Obamacare, but when you've got people who didn't have insurance before, they have it at an affordable price, what are you going to repeal it to? The Republicans are not coming out stating these are the changes that we hope to implement. They're not getting public opinion on that, especially within these communities that really depend upon their coverage and the inexpense of their coverage. And these are that's just one small piece of it where there's a huge disconnect. And I think that if you can bridge the gap there and explain that, even if you got to do live videos, it would make such a difference within our community and would show them something different.
Yeah,
that's a great idea, and I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. It's about getting out and trying to get your message out without being cut off or beat up or not even given any consideration, you know, sometimes about it. And I think that's, and I want to say that, you know, sometimes it scares people more than anything else to try to get out there, and you don't want to deal with the harshness you're going to get back. So you got to figure out a way to get out there and be about it and do it and talk to people more and get your message spread about. So I agree with you wholeheartedly on that.
Right. I see, I almost feel like a lot of the Black community is starting to wake up to the fact that the Democrats haven't fulfilled a lot of promises, you know, and they're starting to wake up when you look at like the school to prison pipeline, right? Like, they're starting to say, well, wait a minute, you know, you come in to solve a problem and you make it worse, you know, and you hear it. So my thinking is like the timing now is.
Especially with the younger generation.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. And after, you know, as people start to peel back the onion, they start to see more that, you know, Republicans aren't bad. They're not, you know, they're not doing anything horrible. They're trying to look out for you. They're just not trying to give you everything. But they're trying to help and be more receptive, and as opposed to, you know, where Democrats are just coming in and saying, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're doing it, and look at those people trying to keep you down and take from you and don't care about you. All they care about is the wealthy. They don't care about the poor, and that message is it's generational, because that message has been carrying on that, you know, all they care about is rich people. Republicans care about rich people. They don't care about poor people, and that's not a good way to be.
Right. I think that's how I learned about Republicans, honestly, like in school and whatever. Like that was my impression of the Republican Party, that it was a party for the rich.
Right.
You know?
and it's sad. And it's the interesting thing, I've gotten more conversations on the side where people are whispering in my ear, Democrats, you know, lifelong Democrats. I'm supporting you guys. You know, you guys, I've really been listening to your message, but they've been secretly doing it. They won't come out and publicly say it. They'll secretly do it, and it's amazing that, you know, that people are scared to be boastful about who they're voting for. because of the repercussions they're going to get, and that's a sad way to be. You
Well,
know,
I think,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but I think when you're in a community and you're in a community that's been disenfranchised, and you have people who see symbolism with taking down Confederate statues, where you're going to come in and you've got health care now that you didn't have before. It seems that you have some social programs, because within the Black community, it's all about social justice. And you can see these things, but you don't see them on the other side. And then you don't have anybody on the other side who will come in and say, listen, Romney Care, Obamacare is Romney Care. It was taken from a Republican.
I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, because the Republicans don't talk. It was already in place in Massachusetts, and it's a Republican initiative, and nobody knows it unless you've been immersed in this and you're doing your own research, and you're not coming in and you're saying, here are the issues that we care about. We care about the fact that you have the highest maternal mortality rate, you've got the highest rate of abortion, and here's what we need to do about that. These are the initiatives that help to protect the social justice narrative that Blacks have and they need within their communities. And I think that if Republicans were to come in and talk about these things, because you do have a lot of things in place, but no one knows about them. You can't find it when you go to look for a candidate. It's not listed on his website. It's not listed on what's mailed out. And we're also not talking about the fact that even if you don't agree with who your presidential candidate is, it is Congress that votes your bills into law. So these are the people who are making the major decisions for your community, and these are the people who need to be in that community telling you what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how this process works.
Right.
If we could get more of that, we could get further along, and I'm sure Blacks wouldn't have to whisper that, I'm going to secretly vote for you, because they don't want to be on the outside looking in and have their own community think, I'm not for social justice, I'm not for equity, which is what we need first. That's why we haven't gotten to equality, because we don't have equity. Right. And I'm not for this, where the Democrats are in there all the time. Equity, equity, equity. This is how we're going to do it. Yet they don't fulfill the promises, but they're still there talking about it. They give you a little snippet of something, whereas they don't feel like the Republicans are giving anything. That's how we change the narrative, and that's I'm just seeing it. I've seen a lot of it.
Right.
Yeah, you're so right about that. And you had mentioned a little bit about the abortions and the infant mortality, and and the high rate, especially in New Jersey, and with our people, the infant mortality rate is ridiculous. I mean, in my district in Cumberland County is the poorest county in the state, and one of the highest with the infant mortality rate in the state and in the nation. And if you notice, the abortion clinics are in the poor districts, in the poor neighborhoods.
Yes.
I live here in Cape May County. There's not one abortion clinic in Cape May County, not one. But there's several in Cumberland County. And so if you look in the poorest districts, where are the abortion clinics at? And they're run by Democrats.
Yes.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
So our people are suffering. Our mothers and sisters are suffering, when they go to have a baby, because they don't have the care that they need. And then they want to send you to an abortion clinic, or they don't understand why their child died, because they didn't have the health care. But if you're in a different neighborhood, where it's wealthy, then they're not having that problem. So that's what needs to change.
That needs to change, yeah. And also like medical protocols, right? Because when you go to a doctor as a Black woman, he's deciding your care based on protocols that are not decided by him. Right? So whether they work for you or not, he has to do it to protect his career. So I feel that a lot of the protocols aren't really set based on our Black physiology. Even a lot of the not to even just get into the whole vaccine issue, but like, even if you look at how many our children get when we act double, should we be getting that many? Should we be getting it at the ages or you know what I mean? Who's looking at us to see how we're actually responding and doing it in a way that they really care about the outcome, not just, oh, we're identifying the problem, but y'all are kind of Black anyway, and maybe it's just poverty. You know what I mean? Like, really wanting to get to the bottom of the issue.
And then are they giving you the choice and explaining to you what the vaccine is and what the vaccine does? They don't do that. They just give you the vaccine and then send you away, regardless of what's happening to your babies. And so why not explain to me and give me an opportunity to see if my child needs this vaccine or what's this going to do to us? And as Black people, we know that. Look at the Tuskegee Airmen. You can go back to them and the testing that they had and what kind of problems they had because of that. So we suffer. We always suffer. We're always getting what they want to do as hand-me-downs, and then they figure out what happens to us next as the testing. And it's ridiculous.
Right. It is ridiculous. And then they'll say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll give you another example. So I was displaced from Hurricane Katrina, and I ended up in Austin. My brother and his family ended up in Houston. Houston, heavily Democratic. Austin back then, 2005, Republican. My family and I ended up in Austin with a whole lot of folk. And, it was the great Black exodus out of New Orleans because that's the majority of the people who ended up displaced. So they had a center that they set up in Austin. We went to the center, and at the center, they had all of these different stations for food stamps, for Social Security, for all types of things. So the last station that we got to was about childcare and about furthering your education. What the Republicans in that area of Austin did, they got together with a pool of money. I don't know if they got it from FEMA, where they got it from. But even if you had degrees, they looked at who you were, what you had written down, your education, if you had it, if you didn't have it. So for unwed mothers with children or single mothers, they offered complete child care, 5 days a week, a housing stipend, whatever else that you need, food stamps, whatever else that you need, Social Security if you have a child with special needs, and a list of trades that you could go and learn for free. My husband had an MBA at the time, and he got a project management certification, and we know that those cost thousands of dollars. He got it for free through the state. This is what the Republicans did. Whereas in Houston, they just went through the station, they got the food stamps, they got the welfare, this is the Democratic area, and they were offered nothing. So if you are a mother, you want to better your life, because we can't walk around and say all of these Black women don't want a better life. But if you don't have child care, you can't do it. If you don't have a means to pay back a loan or to even attract some type of financial aid or have a little left over where you have to take a loan out, you can't do it. Austin provided that service through a Republican administration. But no one talks about that.
Right.
And these are the things that are within the Republican Party. These are things that are within specific districts, but the word does not get out. And that's why we have the misconception of what a Republican Party is versus the Democratic Party.
So this flies in the face of the narrative, because I remember the narrative coming out that I heard when Katrina happened was that the Republicans had completely failed people coming out of Louisiana. I mean, that's the understanding that I got. So I'm just like shocked that you're even saying
no, that's not true. I'm gonna tell you what happened because I was there. So I will never forget this. I had just put my school together and I was going on retreat that Saturday. Katrina hit that Monday, August 29th. I was going on retreat that Saturday. The only thing I heard was Wednesday. I got home late because we were busy working on the school. I turned the news on, and there was President Bush signing a state of emergency for Louisiana. He had already signed it. Now, Did he fail to come in and get people out of that city? Yes, he did. Because there were so many people left in that city. But this was something that had never happened before. I mean, the city was underwater because even my house had 11 feet. You could boat by it. So the city was underwater and they did not have a plan in place, which the Republicans should have had a plan in place because there had been a simulation done at Louisiana State University maybe 2 years before. What if this happens? However, if it has never happened, why would you think it would happen when you've got levees that are supposed to secure you up to a Category 4 storm? But what no one ever looked at was how well was that Great Wall around New Orleans being kept. All they did was cut the grass, and they never took care of it. And the storm passed by as a Category 2. The levees broke. So that was the disconnect. And then all of the people taking the Great Exodus out. Many couldn't even come back. A lot of people died because of that. And it wasn't just the Superdome. You had people in hotels. The mayor was in a hotel. The windows blew out on the floor he was on.
Wow.
But you've got a whole Democratic administration within the city fighting against the Republican governor. Nobody's getting along. And so it was a political ploy and a political game that they played with people's lives. That was what was happening internally in Louisiana. Yeah, Bush had to, you got to give him some fault on what he didn't do. But he did sign that state of emergency. And that Saturday morning, when I realized that was a Category 5 out there, I'm thinking because Bush couldn't come in, nor could Blanco, the governor, come in and call for an emergency evacuation and shut that city down. That was the mayor's job to do. And I'm standing there watching the storm out there, and I'm thinking to myself, why hasn't he called for an emergency evacuation? Because my girlfriend calls and tells me that I was going on a retreat with Sheila, we can't go. It's Category 5 hurricane out there. I said, it's up to a Category 5 because we had heard Katrina, the storm was coming that way, but you never know until it gets in the Gulf and sits there a little while where it's going to go. And when I look and I see the massiveness of this storm, and I'm thinking, why isn't this man calling for emergency evacuation? The newscaster down and he's asking, Mr. Mayor, you need to call for an emergency evacuation. And I'm going to tell you why that's important. He had the funds promised to him from Bush. You cannot get out of that city if you don't call for that evacuation within 2 days. If he had called for that evacuation Saturday morning, he would have gotten enough people out. And you cannot, a storm is hitting at the end of the month. You've got a poor community that won't get their check until September 1st. And the storm's hitting on August 29th. So he had already, he didn't call for it Wednesday when the state of emergency was signed. If he had called for it, then he could have kept all of the RTA bus drivers there to drive those people out to Baton Rouge, who couldn't otherwise get out of that city. They needed to own what they did to their own people, and that was the Democratic Party.
Wow.
Blame to go around, but that was the gist of the blame.
Wow.
That's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I remember them saying I don't know if it was President Bush or his wife that said something, right? That they were better off or something like that. And then you heard that over and over and over again. And so that's
I don't know what he was talking about there, but I will tell you, if you went any further up in Texas, other than the majority Democratic area, you wanted any type of job training, any type of education, you needed care, they got it. And a lot of people actually are Blacks who otherwise didn't have an education. That's why you got so many transplants here in Texas from Louisiana. They actually are better off.
Mm-hmm. And media plays a big part in that. If you're listening to CNN or MSNBC, then you're going to get the Democratic side of it. If you listen to Fox, you're going to get the Republican side of it. Right. So you don't know, it's media altogether. And not to say Fox is good and MSNBC is bad or whatever, but you got to stop listening to that altogether. You got to
Right.
get out and talk to the people and talk to your politicians and get out that way, as opposed to getting all your news from that. Because that's all they're going to give you is quotes and sound bites and things that they can pull out to make things newsworthy and to get your attention, and bad or indifferent. And that's what they're going to do. And that's the sad part, I think, that media has played and the downfall of our country as a whole.
Mhm.
I agree
too. And polarizing the country too, right? Because
Yes.
you could hear the news on a same case, like something simple, right? Where the facts should be straightforward, and you listen to, because I'll listen to a lot of all of it, because I want to see the different perspectives, because I
Mhm.
feel like then you realize, wait a minute, people are having an argument over this and they're not even getting the same facts.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Mhm.
So that's irresponsible to me. I mean, when you look at media, it's like, wait a minute, y'all have a responsibility to at least get the facts straight,
Right.
And for us, we're allowing ourselves to be polarized to the point where we can't have intelligent conversations. Like, you're not allowed to say this and you're not allowed to say that,
Right.
Like, what do you mean I'm not allowed to? Like, we should be able to talk about this. You
Right.
should be able to say, I'm Republican and Black, I'm a Black man, I'm a Republican, and not be immediately judged.
Mhm.
I mean, how do we even get to a point where we're not even able to actually have a conversation, to listen without all of these knee-jerk emotional responses?
Right.
I'm seeing a pattern, because it's not just that, it's a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And it's bad that you have to immediately defend yourself. You can't have, an opinion without somebody jumping on you, and you gotta defend yourself on why, and it's only your point of view because you're a Republican. It's like,
Right.
no, my point of view is coming as a Black man at this point in time in the life that I've lived. So
Right.
that's where my point of view is coming from, not necessarily just because I'm a Republican. Let's get rid of that title,
Right.
And it's funny because people, and I haven't gotten used to the fact that when I walk around Trenton, they're saying Assemblyman. No, my name's Antwan McClellan, so call me Antwan. Don't call me Assemblyman, call me Antwan. I'll respond better to Antwan than I will Assemblyman or Republican or the first Black Republican elected in your district.
Right.
And I don't want to talk about all that. I just want to talk about, the change. And I want to be Antwan. I'm the son of Lawrence and Cola McClellan. And we can talk about my family and things like that. Let's not talk about Antwan being the first of this, because if we want to talk about being the first, it's sad that we're now in 2020, and I'm the first Black elected official to the legislative out of this district. That's that's the sad part. That's what we be talking about, not me being the first. But why is it taking us so long? And then why is the Republican Party the one putting me up? If the Democratic Party is all about you're all about race and you want to bring people up, why have you not put up a female, or why have you not put up a Black person in this district yet to represent this district? And then when one is put up, then you're going to try to tear me down, and make it seem like, and then you want to use national headlines. They're spending millions of dollars on me, having a cameraman follow me around and calling me a deadbeat and portraying me this way because I had a financial issue from Superstorm Sandy when I lost my house and I lost my job. And so instead of you reading into it, you want to tear me down. But you're all about equality, and I'm the only Black person here. Your millions of commercials are nationwide. I'm getting calls from my cousins in New York and Pennsylvania as they're trying to destroy you. And why are they trying to do this to you? And I know you and I love you and you're a better person than this. And it's the Democratic Party that's doing that, And where's your equality then? How about we just talk about, what you've done for this district as opposed to tearing somebody down? And that's media. And that's, so it's a whole big ugly circle. And I don't know how you try to get past that. To get rid of that perception that they're all about equality when they're actually not.
Right. I think it's time the monopoly on the Black community ends, though, because that's kind of what it is, right? It's
Yes.
a monopoly, and for us, they've used our trauma and our pain to gain and keep that monopoly. And I think it's time it ends. Like, we need to be able to be free, really free. I wrote a post.
Mentally free.
Yeah, I wrote a post a while back on the fact that I don't feel we're truly free. Why? Because we still live in reservations, at least here in the North, right? We're still on reservations. We have gatekeepers. There's certain information that's not allowed in and certain information is not allowed out. Most of America don't even understand what the Black experience is, and I think that's by design. And every chance we get close to being able to see each other, you have like these, archetypal provocateurs that'll come out and do and say stuff to get people to retreat back into their corners.
Right.
Right.
And it's like, enough already, right? Enough. Divide and conquer continues to be used because it continues to work until we say enough.
Right.
Yeah.
And
we don't even have enough, though. We don't have enough of the truth being put out there.
Right.
And when the truth is out there, there's something about us as a people. We're so easy to forgive those who continuously trespass against us and not look over the fence at maybe someone else who may be able to help shore us up. And I'll give you an example. The Clintons came up with super predator. Biden was in on that and talked about these issues. I found the old clip that I sent to the two of you today. And yet, in the Black community, because Hillary Clinton said she was sorry, they said, okay, that's fine. No one looked at the issues that maybe the Republicans were putting forward. And the Republicans got to own their stuff too, because they were not forthright with telling how are these types of programs going to benefit this particular community. So there's enough blame to go around. But it's as if you and I were talking about today, Sumayyah, when do we get to the point of intolerance for the same song and dance that has gotten us nowhere and we're going nowhere with?
True.
Right.
That is so true. And Republicans got to own up when, you got those Trump supporters that no matter what Trump says, they're going to support him. Everything he says is not correct and not good for everybody. So you shouldn't defend that and hold that up. I don't have to agree with 100% of what anybody says. My fiance and I, we don't get along every day. So, my mom and I, we don't get along every day. So I got siblings. So just because, I'm a Republican, we have a Republican president, I don't agree with everything he says.
Right.
And then, so I don't need to sit there and try to defend that. Right. And that's where Republicans need to be, is like, if he said something that's not good for the country or good for the Black community or good for the Hispanic community or good for the Asian community, then we need to hold him accountable for that. And I think that would go a long way to let people know that just because he's our president and, there's nothing you can do about it for the next 4 years or, a year and a half.
Right.
But hold him accountable for that. And then those people that don't like it, then you try to vote them out.
Right.
But don't systematically sit there and try to take them out. Allow us as a people to try to vote them out.
Right.
And that's a good point. But, the other part of that point is this, and I'm sorry to monopolize, but I'm going to make that right behind your point. As a community, we're too busy waiting for the politician to come to us. These are elected officials who represent us. They are charged with serving their constituents.
Yes.
Why don't we take a trip to their offices and have a talk with them? You won't. I always say this when I travel. I prefer to stay in homes rather than a hotel, because that's when you sat down and you eat a meal or you get face to face with a person. That's how you get to know a person. That's how you get to know if you've got something in common that you can relate to one another, and then you can carry it from there. We also have an obligation to take the time to go into these offices, tell our elected officials what our concerns are, and find out what is a plan of action that they've put in place or they're going to implement to do something about it. So I think it's re-education on both sides.
Yep, absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah, and I hate to quote politicians, but Governor Christie said it's harder to hate up close, and so that's where if I'm in your face and we're sitting there talking, I'm I'm 99.95% sure you're not going to hate me. But
Right.
if you see me on TV, you can hate me and despise me and everything that I talk about. But we're up close, then we can find some common ground. So and that's what we want. We want people to come to our office and visit us, call us, send us a personal email, not those tagged emails where you need to vote for this and you get 5 million of them. So that's not a personal thing, and that you're not getting a personal contact with anybody that way. Call the office, come to the office or email or something, but that's the best way to do it. And when I saw Miss Simone in the hallway, it's like I'm always running to somewhere or something like that, and we've never had an opportunity to connect, and I always wanted to do that. I mean, unfortunately we're doing it this way now, but things like this need to happen more, so you get a better understanding of people and you can respect them more.
Right. Well, I will say I've gone up to a lot of legislators over this past year in the hallway in Trenton, but you were one of the more open ones. Like even though you were rushing and we didn't have a chance to really talk, I felt like you were available, and not all of them are available. And there are some on the Democratic side that I can say were available as well, but there are a whole lot that aren't either. They don't want to hear anything you have to say. And I'm like, I know that you don't see a whole lot of us walking down the halls trying to talk, because a lot of us don't know we can do that. I didn't know I could do that, So like, if you see one, like, listen, right? Like, hear what we have to say.
Yes.
Come outside of that echo chamber, because that's what it is. We can all be in an echo chamber and hear the concerns of somebody else.
Right.
So I think you really did a good job of doing that. And I appreciate that a lot.
I appreciate you. It's exciting to me when somebody comes up to me and wants to talk, and just so I can get more information. And that's the only thing that I crave information. And I guess it's just from me being a child around all my elders, just sitting there listening and absorbing what they say. So I love to talk to people. And that's just what I wanted. And my fiance says it all the time. You sit down and you just talk for hours and hours. I love talking to people. I don't have a problem doing that. And that's what I love to do. And that's how you meet people and you get more information, and I can take things and present things to, to Trenton now, that's my soapbox, and say, this is what the concerns are of the people by talking to more people. So it's enjoyable. And I'm glad you reached out to me, and I'm glad to meet Dr. Easley and Miss Battle, and hopefully we can have more conversations. And that's what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm glad. I think this was a really great discussion, and hopefully it's just like the first of many, because I feel like we could be a part of that change we want to see. It's easy to complain on your couch and be like, it should be, but how do you go about making the change? How do we go about opening up these conversations? How do we stop this knee-jerk response that happens over and over again in our community? And we're not, like I said, how is the Black community supposed to win the game of life here in this country playing on half the field?
Right.
And shaming the players that say, wait, you know what? I think I want to be on the other side of that field, and I want to be over there to represent.
Yes.
And we're like, oh, well, you're racist. Like how do you, if you did that in soccer, if you did that to your players on the other side of the field, you're going to lose that game. Every time. You know what I mean? And you don't have to know the game well to know that it doesn't make logical sense, but emotionally I understand how it happened. So I'm not putting down our community either, because I'm not going to do that. But I understand the history enough to understand how this happened to us. And I think it's time to start healing it.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And things like this can start, and it can effectuate. We drop that pebble in the lake,
right,
and let these ripples start to happen. And right, you ladies are part of that. And I've met many people on this journey that I'm on as Assembly person that are great people and are riding with me. And I think we can start to effectuate a lot of change this way. And we get some more groups together and start talking to folks. I think it's going to be unbelievable, especially if we can get Miss Easley back to New Jersey.
Right.
I'm hopeful I can help from here.
I think she wants to give up the warmth. So, thank you so much for coming. And
Yes.
for those of you who are listening to us, thank you so much for listening. Assemblyman Antwan McClellan, I know I'm saying Assemblyman, but I definitely want to give you all due respect because
Right.
you deserve it. You know,
Thank you.
great. So don't forget to subscribe to our page subscribe to us on YouTube, like our page on Facebook, find us on Twitter at MyBlackHealth2, and follow us there. And we will be back soon with another episode.
God bless.
Okay.
God bless you. Thanks so much for being on. I
Yeah,
really
I really
appreciate it.
I
Thank
really
This was
appreciate
very
it.
enjoyable. Awesome.
Yeah, that was really great. I'm just trying to stop